Hey y'all, so today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. In the month of January, I completed 3 books, all of which weren't super long, so I didn't do a ton of reading in January, but I did read very consistently throughout the month, which makes me really happy because I've been kind of in a reading slump over the past few months, and I feel like I am finally pulling myself out of that, so I am really hoping that the next few months are going to lead to some really awesome reading months. So the first book that I read in January was Quiet by Susan Cain. Now Quiet is actually a book that I read for my research assistant position, so I don't want to talk about it too much because it really wasn't something that I read for myself. But I will briefly talk about it just really quickly, just so you know whether or not you're interested in it. So Quiet is a nonfiction book about the power of introverts in a very talkative, extrovert-heavy society. And overall, I thought this book was just fine. It was an interesting read. It definitely didn't bore me to death or anything like some nonfiction books can. But overall, I didn't think it was that groundbreaking of a book. I just thought it offered some somewhat interesting insight into life as an introvert. And as someone who is very introverted, I did definitely identify with a lot of the stuff that Susan Cain was talking about. But like I said, I just didn't think that it was that groundbreaking of a book. It didn't offer me some insane insight into myself, but it was interesting. That being said, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I liked it. It was okay. I think if I were gonna give it a rating out of 10, it'd probably be like a 7 or a 6.5, which is basically good, but nothing special about it. The next book that I read was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, which is the first book in her Poirot series. I believe this is the 12th book in the Poirot series that I have read, and I've long heard that this is considered by many people to be the best Poirot novel, so I was really excited to pick this one up because I love her Poirot books and I was hoping to have a really interesting, exciting mystery. As the title implies, this book follows the investigation of the murder of Roger Ackroyd. Ackroyd was a wealthy man in a small town who knew a little bit too much about some secret dealings within the town, and we follow the town's doctor as he helps Poirot investigate this murder. After reading this, I can definitely say that this is a really interesting and intricate mystery, but unfortunately, I figured out whodunit very early on in this book, which really never happens for me with Poirot novels. I did write about this in detail in my Goodreads review, so I will link that down in the description. I'm really familiar with the way that Agatha Christie writes, and I think that might have hindered my reading experience a little bit because it allowed me to kind of figure it out sooner than I probably should have. And on top of that, this is a prolific mystery that is 80-ish years old, so people have used tropes from within this book in the 80 years since this book was published, so that makes them easier to notice within the book, even though this is where a lot of the stuff comes from, if that really makes sense. In the end, I gave The Murder of Roger Ackroyd 8 stars out of 10, which translates to 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, because I do think that this is a really clever and intricate mystery that Agatha Christie has set up. Unfortunately, I couldn't give it any higher just because my reading experience was that I figured out what was going on because of things outside of this book. But I did think that because it is a really well-written mystery, it deserved at least 4 stars out of 5. And finally, the last book that I completed in January was Wolf in White Van by John Darnielle. The main character in this book is named Sean, and he has a facial disfigurement from an accident that happened in his teens. And so he is now very reclusive, and he runs this mail-in role-playing game called Trace Italian. But that's all I'm really gonna say about this plot-wise because I think this is one of those books where you kind of need to go into it without knowing a ton about it. But one of the most interesting features about Wolf in White Van is that it is not a linear story in the slightest. Sean's story is told in bits and pieces and fragments that you have to kind of piece together to fully understand what is going on and what did happen, and it makes for a really cool, mysterious storytelling method. And on top of this, the sections where Sean is discussing Trace Italian, his role-playing game, are really, really interesting, and for me, those were my favorite parts of the novel. Other people have said this, but I know that some people tend to get a Ready Player One vibe when they hear the description of this book, but I just want to say that's not the case. This is more like a literary fiction novel, and honestly, the game aspects are not similar to Ready Player One in any way. Now, there are a couple complaints that I did have about the book. The first being that I knew that this was going to be one of those like slow burning books, but I felt like it started to pick up steam in the first half of the book, and then it kind of lost it in the second half of the book. I was still really interested in what was going on, and I still had the motivation to read it, but there was just something missing that kept me from being like really invested like I felt like I should have been. And there were also a couple moments where I felt like the character motivation wasn't really clear, and perhaps that was what John Darnielle wanted, but I felt like it was needed given the circumstances that I'm not going to mention because spoilers. That being said, I was between a 9 and an 8.5 because I did really enjoy this book. I ended up going with an 8.5 because I do tend to lower my reviews by half a point eventually, so I thought I'd just do that right out of the gate and give this one 8.5 stars out of 10, which translates to 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. So that is it for the books that I read in January. Normally this would be where I would jump into my February TBR, but like I've said in a few videos, I've decided not to do official TBRs throughout the year just because I feel like they were kind of my downfall in 2015. However, I do want to briefly talk about what I am currently reading, as well as pick a book from my book stack for my book stack challenge for February. So right now, the book that I am currently reading is The Chimes by Anna Smale, which I ended up picking up just last night, so I'm only like 15 pages into it. I actually did something that I, for some reason, have never done before, and I just kind of started picking up books on my bookshelf that interested me and reading the first page or the first paragraph to see what really hooked me. And this was the one I ended up going with. I think I'm kind of just in a literary fiction mood after my first few reads of the year, so I wanted to go ahead and jump into this one. And so far I'm really enjoying it. This is definitely what I'm in the mood for right now, so I think I kind of hit this one just at the right time, so I hope I really enjoy it. So now moving on to my book stack challenge. If you don't know what this is, I will leave a link either in the cards, which I'm going to start trying to use, or down in the description to the video where I reintroduced this challenge at the beginning of the year. Essentially, I have this stack of books right here, and each month I choose one book that is in the stack to read throughout that month. And I then replace it on the stack so that there are always 5 books to choose from each month. So now I need to choose what book I am going to read for February, and I already know which one it's going to be. Sandman Volume 1, Preludes and Nocturnes by Neil Gaiman. This is one that I've been meaning to get to in the next few weeks, so this was the obvious choice for me for my February book stack challenge. And now to replace it on the stack with another book from my TBR jar. And I think once again, I'm just going to dump them all out because trying to shake this up is going to do literally nothing. Get out. Yikes, they went everywhere. So this is the one I picked up. Instead of going by color, this time I just kind of closed my eyes and picked one up. So this is the one we're going with. So the book that is getting added to the stack is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. This is one I've been meaning to get to ever since it was released in October, so I don't think this one's gonna stay on the stack for very long. So that is it for my January wrap-up. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the books that I've talked about today. Let me know what book I should choose from my stack for next month. As always, I will leave links down in the description to my blog, Twitter, and Goodreads. Please add me as a friend on Goodreads. I would love to be friends with all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you so much for watching. Bye! This is a bad idea. Oh, this is a real bad idea. I mean, they're all in one place at least. I don't think I've lost any.